Coleridge Tower was one of the tallest skyscrapers in the city, a gleaming glass monolith that reached high into the clouds. It housed offices for major corporations, luxury apartments, and exclusive penthouses. It was a symbol of power, success, and ambition, at least on the floors everyone could remember. Lena had worked in the building for 3 years, taking the elevator up to the 32nd floor every weekday to her job at a marketing firm. It was routine by now, mindless even. She knew every nook and cranny of the building, from the pristine lobby with its sleek marble floors to the stale-smelling stairwells no one ever used, or so she thought. One day, during a particularly slow afternoon, Lena's co-worker, Jake, leaned over his desk with a mischievous grin. "You ever hear the stories about the forgotten floor?" Lena raised an eyebrow. "The what?" Jake shrugged casually, but there was an edge of unease to his voice. "You know, the floor no one talks about, the one that's not listed on the elevator buttons. People say there's a floor in this building that shouldn't exist. People who've gone there, they don't come back. Or if they do, they're not the same." Lena scoffed. "Come on, Jake. You've been watching too many horror movies." He chuckled, but his eyes didn't quite meet hers. "Maybe, but I've heard some weird things from people around here. You should ask the maintenance guy, Tom. He's been here forever." Later that evening, curiosity got the best of her. She caught Tom, the grizzled old maintenance worker, while he was fixing a vending machine in the break room. "Hey, Tom, do you know anything about a forgotten floor in the building?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. Tom froze. His face darkened, and he glanced around the room nervously, as if someone might overhear. "Listen," he said, voice low. "You don't want to be asking about that. I've seen things, heard things. It's not just some ghost story. People have gone missing and no one remembers them. They just fade away." Lena laughed nervously. "Come on, Tom, that sounds ridiculous. There's no way a whole floor could be hidden in a building like this." Tom's eyes narrowed. "You think so? There's 45 floors in Coleridge Tower, right?" "Right. Next time you're in the elevator, look at the floor buttons carefully." She shrugged off his warning, but later, as she rode the elevator down to the lobby, she found herself staring at the panel of floor buttons. 1, 2, 3. 45. All there, just as expected. She let out a relieved breath and smiled to herself. Of course, there wasn't a forgotten floor, just a silly urban legend. Then, just as the elevator doors were about to close, she noticed something strange. Between the buttons for the 12th and 14th floors, there was a faint smudge, almost like a worn-away number. Lena leaned in closer, squinting. It was barely noticeable, but there it was. A ghostly imprint where 13 should have been. Her heart skipped a beat. Coleridge Tower didn't have a 13th floor like many buildings, but something was off. Without thinking, she pressed the invisible spot between 12 and 14. The elevator shuddered, its smooth hum replaced by an eerie, grinding noise. The floors ticked by slowly on the digital display. 10, 11, 12. Then the display went blank. The elevator stopped. The doors slid open to reveal a dimly lit hallway. Unlike the sleek, modern design of the rest of the building, this floor was old, ancient even. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and the carpet was worn and stained, like it hadn't been touched in decades. A faint, musty smell clung to the air. Lena hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to leave. But something pulled her forward. Curiosity, or maybe the eerie silence that seemed to call out to her. As she stepped out of the elevator, the doors slammed shut behind her with a hollow clang. She turned, panic rising in her chest, and jabbed the call button. Nothing. The elevator didn't respond. Her heart pounded in her ears as she looked around. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, dim lights flickering overhead. Every door she passed was locked, the room numbers either missing or faded beyond recognition. The deeper she walked, the more disoriented she felt. The hallways seemed to twist and stretch in unnatural ways. No matter how far she went, the layout didn't make sense. Turns led her back to places she'd already been, and some corridors seemed to extend impossibly far. After what felt like hours, Lena stopped in front of a door slightly ajar. A soft whispering drifted from inside. She pushed it open slowly and found a small empty room with a single window. Outside, there was no city skyline, no bustling streets, just a thick, endless fog. And yet, she had the distinct feeling she was being watched. As she stood there trying to make sense of it all, a creeping dread settled into her bones. She realized something terrifying. She couldn't remember why she had come to this floor in the first place. "How long have I been here?" she thought. She checked her phone, but the screen was blank. No time, no date, no signal. Then it hit her. She couldn't remember what she'd had for breakfast that morning, or what she had been working on before she left her office. Every attempt to recall her day was met with a blank, like the memories had been scrubbed clean. Suddenly she heard footsteps behind her. She spun around, but no one was there. The air grew heavier, pressing in on her, and the whispers grew louder. They were coming from every direction now, unintelligible but urgent. Panicked, Lena ran back toward the elevator, her footsteps echoing down the endless hallway. But no matter how far she ran, the corridor stretched on. Doors blurred past her, each more warped and twisted than the last. She could feel it now. Something was watching her, stalking her from the shadows. Days passed. She thought they did, at least. Time had no meaning here. Each day, another piece of her slipped away. Her childhood, her friends, even her own name became foggy, distant. She would wake up on the floor, not remembering how she had gotten there, or what she had done the day before. The worst part was the loneliness. She wasn't sure if there had ever been others trapped on this floor, but she was certain that, like her, they had all faded away, forgotten by the world above, just like the floor itself. As she sat in the corner of a darkened room, her mind slipping further into the void, Lena had one final, horrifying realization. She had been on the 13th floor all along. She just couldn't remember how or why she'd ever left. And soon, no one else would either. It started with a notification, innocuous enough. "You have a new follower." The user's profile picture was a grainy, blurry version of her own, so distorted that it looked like it had been copied from a photo taken through a dirty window. The username? Dauer Echo, Liz90, eerily similar to Liz's own handle, Liz90. At first, Liz Carter didn't think much of it. Social media was full of bots and fake accounts after all. But something about this one unsettled her. When she clicked on the profile, she found it nearly empty except for one thing, her posts. Each one was a near-perfect copy of what she had posted on her own page. The same selfies, the same captions, the same timestamps. But there were subtle differences, as though someone had taken the essence of her posts and warped them in small, disturbing ways. The comments on the pictures were also unsettling. Instead of the usual likes and friendly emojis from her friends, the posts had odd, cryptic comments from accounts she didn't recognize. Messages like, "It's coming soon," "You won't be able to hide forever," and strangest of all, "I see you." Liz chuckled nervously and brushed it off as a weird glitch or some hacker trying to mess with her. She reported the profile, thinking it would disappear in a few days. But the next morning, the account was still there. More than that, it had posted something new. She froze when she saw it. The picture was of her, wearing the same clothes she had worn just yesterday, standing in front of the coffee shop she always visited before work. But she hadn't taken that picture. In fact, no one had. She had been alone all morning. The caption sent a chill down her spine. Morning routine, but not for long. Liz stared at the post, her mind racing. How had someone taken a photo of her without her knowing? The angle was wrong, too, like it had been taken from somewhere high above, an impossible vantage point. She checked the timestamp. The post had gone live exactly 2 minutes before she'd even arrived at the coffee shop. Feeling paranoid, she deleted her own version of the post, hoping to break the connection between her profile and this creepy copy. But the clone's post stayed up, untouched. And now, a creeping dread was settling into her bones, a nagging feeling that this was something more than a prank. That night, Liz tried to ignore the clone profile, but she couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her. She woke at 3 a.m. to a ping from her phone, another notification from Oreco. Liz 90. Groggy and half asleep, she opened it. Her blood ran cold. The clone had posted again, another photo, but this one was from inside her apartment. The image showed her asleep in bed, covers pulled tight, hair splayed out across the pillow. The caption read, "She looks so peaceful, but not for long." Liz leapt out of bed, adrenaline surging through her veins. She checked the locks on her doors and windows, convinced someone had broken in, but everything was locked up tight. There was no one there. How had they gotten that picture? Terrified, she frantically reported the account again, but the option to block or remove it was gone. No matter how many times she tried, the app wouldn't let her disconnect from the clone. She deleted her own profile in desperation, but even that didn't work. Within hours, her page reappeared, freshly populated with all the posts she had tried to erase, each one mirrored on the Echo Liz 90 account. The next few days were a waking nightmare. Every time Liz posted something, no matter how small or insignificant, Echo Liz 90 posted it first. The same photo, the same caption, but always with a sinister twist. The more it happened, the more Liz began to feel like her every move was being predicted, her future laid out before her by this eerie doppelganger. But the worst came 5 days later. It was a gloomy Wednesday afternoon when the latest post appeared. Liz had been on edge all day, feeling eyes on her even in the busiest parts of the city. When the notification buzzed, she almost didn't check it, but she had to know. Her hands shook as she opened the app. The post was a picture of her, standing at the edge of a busy intersection. The angle was high up, almost like a drone shot, and she recognized the intersection instantly. It was on her route home. The caption was short, almost mocking. "Last steps." Liz's heart thundered in her chest. She wasn't anywhere near that intersection yet. She hadn't even left work. But the timestamp was only a few minutes old. Panicked, she called her best friend, Alyssa. "Something's wrong," Liz stammered. "There's this account. It's copying me, predicting things. Horrible things." Alyssa, concerned but skeptical, promised to meet her right away. "Stay put. I'll come get you." But the next message from Echo Liz 90 shattered what little hope Liz had left. The clone had posted again, just as Alyssa hung up. It was a photo of Alyssa's car, parked right outside Liz's building. Alyssa hadn't even arrived yet. The caption? Too late. Liz's phone slipped from her trembling fingers, the screen going dark as it hit the floor. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Was it warning her, or was it making these things happen? Without thinking, she grabbed her bag and ran out of the building, desperate to escape the sinister force that seemed to know her every move. But as she burst onto the crowded sidewalk, her phone buzzed one last time. She glanced down, barely able to focus on the screen. It was a live stream. She watched in horror as the camera showed her from above, running frantically down the street, exactly as she was in that moment. The perspective shifted, zooming in on her, like she was prey being hunted. The caption flashed at the bottom of the screen. No escape. Liz's breath caught in her throat as she realized what was happening. She wasn't just being followed. She was being watched by something beyond her control, something that wasn't bound by the rules of her world. Every step she took, every turn she made, the clone knew, because it was leading her there. And in the echo of her own footsteps, she realized with chilling certainty, it always would.